4 charges were dropped. He pled to no contest to 1.
Correct.
$500 fine was suspended, and he gave a $1,000 donation to
The Virginia Coalition for Open Government.
Okay. And you said we are not recommending?
That is correct.
Okay.
We're not recommending removal from office. That's something that's left to the voters of Virginia Beach. I mean, we're talking about a Class 3 misdemeanor. And you know, if the voters decide to retain him, fine. If they decide to not retain him as mayor, that's up to them. I'm not a voter in Virginia Beach. I live in Lynchburg, and I just don't think it's appropriate, given the facts and circumstances, for someone from Lynchburg to come to Virginia Beach and say you can't have Mr. Sessom as your mayor.
So how did you reach this agreement?
We talked.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure what it was. I have no, never been involved with Virginia Coalition Open Government. I was looking for something that I thought was an appropriate place to send such a donation. Their organization is designed to promote open government, to promote the Conflict of Interest Act's requirements, as well as the Freedom of Information Act's requirements. And I just thought it was an appropriate place for such a donation to go. You know, the question is not a matter of fine. I mean, the most that could have happened here was a $2,500 fine. So I think it was far more important for there to be some acknowledgement of accountability, some acknowledgement of responsibility, keeping in mind that what he was charged with was not voting on any particular matter. What he was charged with was not saying certain words that are required by statute before voting. And those, basically, those words are that I have an interest in this particular transaction, this particular vote. Here's what my interest is as the CEO of Town Bank. However, I belong to a group or a profession of 3 or more people and that are affected by this, and I promise I can be fair and impartial. And if you say those magic words, then the Conflict of Interest Act is satisfied. It was not since it was not something where there was a direct financial benefit to him alone, therefore he did not need to abstain, he just needed to say those magic words.
When you charged him, Mr. Doucette, you said that there were a number of votes that you looked at that the statute of limitations had expired on. How many of those were there?
I'm sorry.
Dozens?
No. It was less than 10. I don't remember exactly.
Why did you agree to this deal?
I suggested it.
You suggested all of them. How come? Why are you satisfied?
Again, and I think I just said it. I think that it was important that there be an acknowledgement of responsibility, an acknowledgement of accountability. And we've had that today. I would assume that in the future that Mayor Sessom's, if there is a vote that comes up that involves any Town Bank customer, will say those words that I just said. And so I think that's important. And again, that legal requirement is there regardless of whether anyone knows that he was the CEO of Town Bank. Of course, he's not anymore, but you know, and I think for the rest of City Council, it's important to realize that there are certain requirements. They're not tough. They're not tough, but and regardless of whether everybody knows about one's relationship with whatever the entity is, you still have to say. It has to be on the record because there might be somebody in the audience who does not know about that.
Do you believe saying some, as you put it, magic words is adequate to prevent a conflict of interest?
That's not my call to make. That's a call for the General Assembly to make. I mean, my job is to enforce the laws that they pass.
Well, as a prosecutor, you think the conflict of interest laws in Virginia are pretty lax or weak, or?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Really? As a prosecutor, it doesn't bother you?
I'm not going to. It's not
Okay.
my. It's not my call. It's you know. I'm not.
Prosecutors call for stricter laws all the time, drugs and so forth.
You know, this is one of those things where I will tell you. I think that the Conflict of Interest Act needs to be worked on a whole lot more. I don't know if you need to have any stricter penalties for not saying these words. But there are other problems. I mean, the Conflict of Interest Act, you look at some of the things that are going to go into effect as of Friday. The law changes dramatically on Friday, and there are some things that the General Assembly passed in the 2015 session that are problematic as far as I'm concerned. I mean, one of them, I'll give you an example of one of the problems that's going to come up in the new law. Under the Conflict of Interest Act, if there's a request by a public official, a local public official, for a conflict of interest opinion, if they ask me as the prosecutor, and I say you do not have a conflict, even if I'm wrong on my interpretation of the law, that is immunity. They are immunized from going forward, or for a prosecution going forward. Under the old law, if the local government official went to the city attorney or the county attorney and asked for an opinion, that was not immunity, but was a situation where they could raise that as a good faith defense.
So they've actually made the conflict of laws more lax.
Well, that's the old law.
But the new law, with the change that takes effect Friday, it's actually indemnifies public officials who go to somebody who perhaps is mistaken.
Not only mistaken, but is an employee of theirs.
Right. So they weakened the conflict of interest.
So in that particular aspect, I think that that definitely needs to be tightened up dramatically. But basically, a local government attorney who is employed by a board of supervisors, county board of supervisors, city council, can issue an opinion to their employer saying you don't have a conflict. That conflict, that opinion can, after the vote, be withdrawn, and it is now transactional immunity as of Friday. So.
I'm sorry to be hogging all the questions. I have one more. You said that you're satisfied that the mayor had accepted responsibility and acknowledged, or I forget what your word was. I have to go back and look. How did he do that? By pleading no contest? Shouldn't he have pled guilty?
Well, yeah. I mean, no contest. I suppose, being involved in law for over 30 years now, I mean, a no contest is a guilty plea in the sense that everyone realizes, the mayor realized that when he made the no contest, that he was going to be found guilty. No contest basically means if there's any collateral consequences on the civil side, and I'm not saying there are, but if there are any collateral consequences, then his plea can't be used against him. If he pled guilty and there was a civil collateral consequence, then his plea could be used against him.